Welcome to Strip Cover Lit, where we squeeze the bigger picture out of literature. I'm Adrian Fort.
And I'm Dalton Gentry.
And we're here for a discussion of a short story. That short story being
Counterparts.
from
James Joyce.
by
James Joyce. The Dubliners. Shut up. But anyway, this is Counterparts. James Joyce. And honestly, dare I say this aloud, I think I like James Joyce's short stories better than his novels.
There's nothing to be ashamed of with liking his short stories better than his novels. There's probably something to be ashamed of by liking James Joyce.
You think so?
Yeah.
What's wrong with James Joyce?
It means that you're pretentious.
Oh, yeah?
Yeah.
Is that how it works?
It means that.
Like, this isn't bad. This isn't
No,
bad.
this is pretty good.
So, where do you want to dive in with this?
I'm not sure.
Okay.
Where do you want to start?
This, again, you have to know James Joyce. We have to be talking about Ireland, and again, we have to be talking about religion, because there's two big things at play here.
Sure, they're the two big things at play here, but I don't know that you would have to be familiar with James Joyce or Ireland or religion to get something out of this, especially... so the first thing that hit me was... Well, the first thing that hit me was the North Ireland accent, but the first thing that hit me on a guttural level was a quote from 61. When he stood up, he was tall and of great bulk. He had a hanging face, dark wine-colored, with fair eyebrows and a mustache. His eyes bulged forward slightly, and the whites of them were dirty. Struck me immediately he's an alcoholic. Mm-hmm. Immediately, that strikes you. That jumps off the page. He's an alcoholic. And then you get the next page. A spasm of rage gripped his throat, and for a few moments... A spasm of rage gripped his throat for a few moments, and then passed, leaving after it a sharp sensation of thirst. You know immediately.
He's an alcoholic.
He's an alcoholic.
And we can look at this as a text about addiction, if you will, alcoholism, if you will, because I think there are a lot of good points in this for that.
We could look at this as a text about addiction if you're likening someone being addicted to alcohol with Ireland, north of Ireland, being addicted to the Crown.
Okay.
North of Ireland. So the reason, what stereotype do you have about Irish people?
So again, if we were going to be looking at stereotypes in this, you've got the drunk Irishman, 100%. He lives in the pub. He's got the rosy wine-colored face. He's a lush.
His eyes are yellow.
There you go.
Mocks his bosses and his boss's secretary. Is that I didn't catch who Miss Parker is, but I believe that is Miss Parker returned to her machine, saying to a man who's writing at his desk. So I believe that is the secretary or a courier of some sort. She's also from North of Ireland.
You think?
Yeah, she said that in her North Irish accent.
All of our names of characters who are not Farrington seem to have really English-sounding names. Parker, Allen. I don't think they're from this part. Like, again, I get it, they have the Irish accent, but I think we're making a point here that these are not Irishmen.
Right, absolutely the line is being drawn,
yes.
that they're not official Irishmen, they're
and
not
I think
real Irish.
That's how we are really getting into the meat of this story here, is this is the struggles of Ireland, 100%.
100%.
And I enjoy that, I think it's good, but at its base level here, we do have a story about a man who can't complete his work because he's an alcoholic, and all he wants to do is go to the pub. I was entirely sympathetic towards this guy. And I have no idea why. I'm just going to say that now. 100% sympathetic to him up until the point he beats his kid.
Oh, well, yeah. I mean, so that, yeah, obviously.
So
but I can tell you exactly why you're sympathetic to him.
No, it's fine. I'm fine. I don't need to know. Moving on. But anyway, I like this guy. I wanted to root for this guy.
Why are you blushing?
I don't know.
Are you thirsty?
I'm thirsty. Are my eyes yellow again? But anyway, I wanted to root for this guy. I think like there was just so much going on with this, and it turns out no, he's just an angry drunk who beats his kids. But I think he does so for a reason, because I think he represents Ireland.
What? What?
He does.
Well, yeah, but that's why he beats his kids.
Poorly worded. But you know where I was going with this.
Yes, I know where you were going with it.
So
what does the child represent?
what does the child represent? I think the child starts to play a little bit more with religion because.
Well, the child represents the future of Ireland.
Okay.
Right.
Okay. Fair enough. And I do think the child has a little moment there where he's like, "Yo, I'll say some Hail Marys for you, Daddy, while you beat me." Which, again, we're looking at religion here. How nothing's going to save you, baby. Even God's not going to get you out.
The current generation is beating the younger, basically beating religion into the younger generation.
Okay.
The younger generation is, in order to escape a beating, promising to say Hail Marys, which is to win the acceptance of old Ireland. Young Ireland turns to religion in the face of this violence.
But regardless of how many Hail Marys you say, regardless of what happens here, God is not going to save you. I think that's Joyce. What?
No, I'm not. No, I'm not making fun.
You
of
make one misstep on your wording here, and suddenly, excuse me.
It's just probably a good thing you don't have children.
It's fine. It's fine. But again, I'd like to go back to the point that all the characters here that are against Farrington, if you will, everybody he works with, have very plain English-sounding names. All these people are people he represents. The people he gets along with when he goes out to the pub, wholeheartedly stereotypical Irish nicknames.
Right.
So, what we're looking at here is this seems to be a man who is living the struggle of the Irishman. He's living in a world of change. He is wanting to hold on to this Irish pride, this idea of Ireland within him, but he is constantly being berated and forced to change by outsiders.
Is he the bad guy?
I want to say no. I think that's why I want to be sympathetic towards him.
Why do you want to say no and have sympathy for him?
Because he seems like a man who's suffering. He's in a world of change and he doesn't know how to cope or adapt to that.
He seems to have no hand over his own plight.
Correct. He wants to hold on to his pride, his nationality, but the world is beating him down.
He wants to hold on to his sense of identity. Nationality is wrapped up in that, but along with it, he does something very telling. How does he get his money for liquor?
Sells his pocket watch.
What is a pocket watch?
Time.
A watch is expectation.
Okay.
A watch is the workday. A watch is responsibility.
Okay.
So by selling that watch, what he's done is he has forfeited his responsibility.
Okay.
He feels he does not own his own time.
Okay.
That is why he's willing to give away that pocket watch so easily. He doesn't even get what he asks for it. He just gets enough. And to a drunk, enough is enough.
Enough's enough. I took it a different way.
Okay.
So a watch is usually an heirloom piece, especially this day and age. Watches are expensive. They're usually passed down from generations. So it could be assumed that this watch would have come from his father, his grandfather, something along those lines. This is a symbol of, again, Irish nationality. This is an Irish watch. This is something that is symbolic to him. It's something that is sentimental to him. So by giving that up, he is giving away parts of himself to continue this life.
But even then, why did your father need a watch?
To tell time.
So he's not late to work.
There you go.
Why does your father need why does your father need the chain on the pocket watch, which is how he finds his pocket watch? Remember, he's walking along and just starts playing with the chain.
Got to keep it close to you.
Got to make sure it doesn't get stolen.
Okay.
It doesn't get stolen, but you can give it away. You know where it's at. It's close enough to you. Just take it out. Sell it, man.
Okay.
You need those drinks tonight. You need those drinks tonight. So he gives away his only chance at making the future better.
Okay.
This is responsibility. This is the workaday. This is the way that he gets there. He's already walked out on his job when he knows he's going to be fired if he doesn't get that contract written up.
Fair.
He already left that. So what's he doing now? He's not just ruining today. He's
tomorrow.
not just beating his kid. He's ruining tomorrow and changing his child's perception. Is he the bad guy?
Again, that's a hard question. I want to be sympathetic towards Farrington.
Why do you want to be sympathetic?
I don't know. I just I feel bad for the guy. He's in a bad spot.
Do you feel bad for him or do you identify with him?
Yes. So, I feel bad for him. Is he the bad guy in this? You want to say yes. We have a drunk here who's basically just given up on his job, given up on his hope, and goes home and beats his kid at night.
Do we have any reason to believe that this is the first time he's done something like this?
Oh, God, no. At one point, I believe he returns to the office, and they are well aware of where he's been. They mention something like, oh, isn't 5 too many in a night? So this seems to be a constant problem. It's not something that just popped up, bad things happen, so I got to get out of here. It's a constant problem.
So has he ruined tomorrow?
I believe he's already ruined tomorrow, absolutely.
How so?
Seems to be a progressive thing. This doesn't just happen overnight.
Well, but what I mean is he going to be fired for this?
I don't know.
He left without getting that contract done, didn't he?
He did, but this seems to be his normal workaday.
Do you have any reason to believe that this is the first time he's been told those things, given those ultimatums?
No. I would not say it's the first time.
So it seems to be just the way the guy goes about things, right? We do have one thing that to me stuck out as the first time this type of thing has happened.
Okay.
Or at least rare enough that our character does not seem familiar with it in a way that he might need to be. He goes to the bars, right? And they're all drinking. Farrington's eyes wandered at every moment in the direction of one of the young women. There was something striking in her appearance. An immense scarf of peacock blue muslin was around her hat and knotted in a great bow under her chin, and she wore bright yellow gloves reaching to the elbow. Farrington gazed admiringly at the plump arm which she moved very often and with much grace, and when after a little time she answered his gaze, he admired still more her large dark brown eyes. The oblique, staring expression in them fascinated him. She glanced at him once or twice, and when the party was leaving the room, she brushed against his chair and said, "Oh, pardon," in a London accent. He watched her leave the room in hope that she would look back at him, but he was disappointed. That leads into when Paddy Leonard called him, he found that they were talking about feats of strength. What happens with that feat of strength?
He fails.
It leads to an arm wrestling contest. And in that arm wrestling contest, our big scary guy loses. This is confirmation to this character that he is lesser than the English.
Okay.
That is why he gets so angry. It is not just that there was a woman who rebuffed him. It's a woman that didn't even give him a second look. And she was from London.
Yep.
And then, in order to regain his bravado, he goes ahead and accepts an arm wrestling match and promptly loses. So, what it's saying is, oh yeah, you're not a real man, you're not English, You're just an Irishman. That's where those things get flipped in his mind. And that's why he becomes irreconcilably angry on the walk home, so much so that he feels he's not even drunk.
Okay. I think there's a little bit, I agree wholeheartedly with you on that one. I think there's a little bit more symbolism to it as well. What job does he work? He works as basically, call him a copywriter. Basically, he copies down the works for a law firm. Seems to be a pretty decent job, especially for this day and age.
Right.
Seems to be at one point Farrington was a relatively intelligent man to land a job like this.
Keeping him out of the fields, keeping him out of the woods,
So,
keeping him out of the cold.
exactly. You're going to be working with your hands if you're not doing this. At this point here, he loses that arm wrestling competition. It would be assumed that if he is willing to get into an arm wrestling competition, at one point he was a pretty strapping young man.
At least he found himself that way.
He's not anymore. So now he's looking at his own mortality, because if he's lost this job and he can't best somebody in an arm wrestling match, there is literally nothing left for him. He has no job in the mind, he has no job in the body. He goes home and beats his son, because there is nothing more. He's
Well,
a man
because
with
his
nothing
wife
to
isn't
lose.
even home.
Yeah, his wife is gone as well. His wife is at the church.
Yeah.
Again, pouring herself
His
into
wife
God.
has chosen God.
Yes.
His son has chosen God.
And he is all alone.
And this is one of the reasons when his son offers to say the Hail Marys, he goes ahead and gets it anyway.
Yeah.
'Cause Mama chose God, you don't get to.
It's an interesting piece. It's a man at his last bits. There's not much going for Farrington right now. And again, we can assume that it is not going to get better for him. It's going to be the same vicious cycle until something inevitable happens.
So this is one of the things that I often find compelling about Joyce is that Joyce's stories are not confined to the page.
Okay.
You get a sense of going forward. The last one we read, 2 Gallants. You get a sense going forward that those 2 rapscallions are still at it.
Okay.
Portrait of the artist as a young man. You end up wondering about the artist as an old man. Counterparts. If Portrait of the Artist as a Young Man is about someone's religion doing this and their artistry doing this, and 2 Gallants is the story of someone's morality doing this and their financial situation doing this, what do you feel Counterparts is?
It's a good question. What are you thinking?
It's a straight line.
Okay.
We have every reason to believe that the day before this,
The same thing happened.
the same thing happened. That the day after this,
The same thing will happen.
the same thing will happen.
And it's really interesting. We get the young boy at the end. And he's there for maybe 2 paragraphs. That's a story in its own self. There's continuation through this because then this is, again, the father moving forward with life. What is he going to pass on to the next generation? And this poor kid, Daddy used to come home drunk and beat me. He's going to have a rough go. And that's going to continue to be the plight of Ireland. It's going to continue to be a rough go, no matter what happens. So again, we get a lot of this strange Irish pride, Irish nationality leaked into Joyce's work. I think there's a lot of good stuff going on with religion at the end as well, where there's no way God's going to save you in this. There's a lot of Joyce in this work, and that seems to be indicative of every single piece that we read from Dubliners.
Another thing that is almost impossible not to appreciate with James Joyce is the fact that everything fits together so nicely. There are no fray elements. There is nothing straining about the edges. There is no fat on the bone. There is no gristle. And things work together so perfectly that you almost have to wonder if you're reading too much into them.
Okay.
Right? This story is so incredibly piecemeal together
Okay.
by seemingly disparate elements. You've got the workday, where we start. You've got the bar scene, which is the middle. And you've got the home life, which is the end. When you're talking about a short story of, 9 pages?
That's a lot to accomplish.
That's a lot to accomplish, and if I told you that was the case, you would imagine that it is just a spattering of a story, that things were just thrown on a page. But do you even do you remember any of the transition scenes?
No.
No.
It's a very fluid story.
And I think part of the reason that it feels that way is during the transition. So one of the transitions was his walk home.
Okay.
It was during his walk home that he's revving his own engine because he doesn't even feel drunk because he's so mad about the girl walking out. But that's not what he says. He says he's mad because he lost that feat of strength. But if he was properly goosed up, he wouldn't even have remembered that, would he?
Fair.
He was put off by the woman beforehand that made him accept that arm wrestling match. That he lost, that got him pissed off, that sent him home from the bars, where he started thinking about his watch, started thinking about the fact that he lost the arm wrestling match, started thinking about tomorrow.
It all ties together.
It all runs together so smoothly that even the transition scenes are ridiculously useful.
They're necessary. They are. And what kills me about this, and dare I say this about a James Joyce text, Because the beauty in this is its simplicity. It's a very simple piece. It's a man who's basically going to get fired from his job, goes out, has a drink, and beats his son. But there is so much going on within the text. You can read it at its baseline simplicity. This is an alcoholic. But once you really look into it, there's a lot of stuff going on with this. I think that is what makes James Joyce great, is the ability to do this. Because when reading this, I'm sitting here, I'm like, why can't I write something like this? This is so straightforward and so simple.
So simple, yeah.
Why can I not do this? We can't, because you're not James Joyce.
Right.
So
even something so incredibly small as, who is that? The man, said the man peering through the darkness. Me, Paul. Who are you, Charlie? No, Paul. Tom. Even the fact he doesn't know his son's voices from one another.
Fair.
Which says, A, it's not a very good father. B, how many damn children do you have?
Fair.
Both of which are very stereotypically Irish, which is something with which James Joyce was not afraid to play and was willing to exploit. He's willing and able to take these things. When you, reading this story, at any point, did you just scoff and say, why do you have to use the stereotypes?
Yeah, I'd give you that. There's a lot of stereotypes.
Oh, you did?
Here.
Okay. I didn't do that.
Really?
Because they're all real people.
Okay.
I never. So I mean, yeah, obviously, on the surface, it's sort of irritating that you've got to have the British overlords and you've got the drunk Irishman who's got so many kids and his wife's at church. But if you're just reading the story,
it works.
it's all gonna blend together because these are real characters.
Okay.
You never. If you are forced to question whether or not this character has to be Irish, you're going to question whether or not this character has to be Irish before you question whether or not he has to be an alcoholic.
Okay.
This character is built so thoroughly as an alcoholic that you would question his ethnicity first. You'd say, okay, I'd be less offended if you made him X, Y, or Z.
Okay.
You would never say, could we just not have this guy an alcoholic? You know what I mean?
Yeah, it's absolutely necessary as an alcoholic, for sure. There's no question about that.
Right.
And again, I think it works. I think it's beautifully simple. And even for a Joyce work, it's not too dense. It's a pretty quick and pretty decent read. I think it's an approachable read, which is rare.
Well, it's not as rare as we're trying to give Joyce credit for.
From my experience with Joyce...
Well, but what's your experience with Joyce?
Two Gallants, Portrait of the Artist, Young Man...
Portrait of the Artist as Young Man is something that is so dense.
That's fair.
It's going to eclipse everything else you read from that author.
Fair.
Right? If you picked up... what's the William Faulkner that we tried to read and decided we don't know what's going on?
The Sound and the Fury.
If you picked up The Sound and the Fury, you would say to yourself, I'm never reading this guy.
Fair.
But when you pick up something like As I Lay Dying,
It's wonderful.
You get used to the cadences.
I will say, though, like, this at least gave me more of an appreciation for Joyce, which was necessary because I've been blacklisting him.
Yeah, well, yeah, yeah. Especially considering that this on page 62, he returned to his desk in the lower office and counted the sheets which remained to be copied. He took up his pen and dipped it in the ink, but continued to stare stupidly at the last 3 words he had written. I'll be damned if I haven't been there with Joyce.
Yeah.
That made me... I had such a meta moment when I was reading that little phrase there. I was like, yeah, that was my entire experience with Portrait of the Artist as Young Man.
Yeah.
The first time I read Portrait of the Artist as Young Man, did I ever tell you this story?
You told me a little bit about your first read-through.
It was my first literature class. Yeah. So I had been struggling with, the getting an associate's degree. It took me 5 years to get one. And piecemealed together and sort of, you lose your wits the entire time because you can't concentrate on a class long enough because you're working 2 jobs to take the class that you don't get anything out of it. So then by the time I finally put myself in position to go off and go to college, my very first literature class was Portrait of the Artist's Young Man, was As I Lay Dying, and there was something else from that time period in there, but I can't remember what it is right now. And then a bunch of the images and poems, which if you just read that poetry, there's nothing going on. You know what I mean? So I remember sitting there after having been assigned, I think Portrait of the Artist was after As I Lay Dying, and I was lost in As I Lay Dying. So I was sitting there before class on a bench outside the classroom, and the class was held in, they didn't have enough rooms or whatever in the English building, so we were in the...
Criminal Justice Building?
No, we were in the, not financial, like the business management building. And I had come from working retail and being management for 5 years, so seeing all of these pencil necks walking around in their button-up shirts with their skinny ties on, "Hey James, how you doing today?" And they would all shake hands. All shake hands before class. Looking at them, when I know I'm about to go into an English class and get my ass kicked because I can't even read what I'm supposed to read, I had a mental breakdown for an entire semester, thinking I might as well just give up. I don't even understand this stuff. So that was my first experience with Joyce.
Joyce can be difficult. Joyce can be dense. I think this short story, if you're looking at picking up a Joyce for the first time, tisn't a bad place to start.
That's probably actually a pretty good place to start. From what I've read of Joyce, 2 Gallons wasn't terribly difficult.
No, it wasn't. I think I prefer this one to 2 Gallons.
Yeah, so the thing that got me on 2 Gallons was just how difficult it was to get into it first.
Okay.
You're reading about these 2 guys walking along, and it was just sort of, what's going on? Whereas
This story jumps you right in.
Yeah, you're poured right on top. You're an Irish car bomb.
Yeah.
You're the shot of...
The shot floating on top.
Yeah, of the Irish car bomb.
So...
Wow, really shouldn't have gone with that analogy.
That's fine. I approve of it. If you like this kind of thing, make sure you hit the subscribe button down below. We do videos similar to this all the time on Strip Cover Lit. Bit of a discussion rather than a review today. And make sure you leave us a comment down below. What was your first exposure to Joyce, and how did you feel about Counterparts? And if you'd like to help us create more great content like this here on Strip Cover Lit, there's a link, as always, to our Patreon to be found in the description below.